Hello and welcome to Gravitas Wins Conversations. Companies have to be efficient if they have to be profitable. Automation is the primary way to bring that efficiency. In today's conversation, we are going to explore robotic process automation with the founders of NeeliTech. Hi, Jyothi and Arvinda. Welcome to the conversation.
Hi, Joseph.
Hi, Joseph. Thank you.
What is the evolution of RPA? What is the problem that it is trying to solve?
Businesses have grown tenfolds, and there was a time when there were that many uh, people doing the back office work, right? Literally, the big chunk of the RPA scope comes into the back office work, right? But as the hiring people became more and more expensive, maintaining offices became more and more expensive. Companies wanted, quicker, more accurate, cheaper solutions to do the to begin with, the low end rule based repetitive work. Mm.
Hmm.
Essentially that still is the bread and butter of RPA. Of course, we have made it a
Hmm.
lot more intelligent, and it's evolved a lot of it. But in its simplest avatar, the bot works very well when you have given it a repetitive work. And there is repetitive work everywhere, right? Wherever we go, there is manual work, right? So that's how RPA is definitely relevant in all industries, in any vertical or any horizontal that we talk about.
Okay. Can you give me some success stories that you had with RPA?
Right. Yeah, I know. To ask this question to the startup owners is like asking about their kids' success. We're very happy to tell about this, right? But frankly, for a company which is just about 3 years old, some of our customers are the enterprise giants of India. So, so, and we have been able to make a huge impact, right? So that's where we call it as a success, right? So one of our clients is the retail giant in India itself, and they were having the issue during their sales. So they have about major sales through the year. And what happens is, what we see on the e-commerce platform, right? As an end user, the price that we see, it's a very complex calculation behind for that price to be reflected here, right? So as many as 24 calculations, and they're not just simple Excel calculations. So there is a discount given by the seller, there's a
Mm.
discount given by the vendor. That is, let's say if it's a makeup product, the vendor of that, then a reseller, then the e-commerce platform itself is going to give some discount. And for the day, for the brand, for the season, they have a discount. Sometimes it's a part of a combination, so it cannot exceed a 70% discount. So these calculations are very dynamic and very complex. So a team of 11 was managing this and updating it. And during the sales, what would happen is the seller would have sent some discount, but by the time the e-commerce team processed it and put it on the web page, they would have lost a good amount of 6 to 8 hours of
Mm.
the sale. And the sale is only one day, right? So they would come back with disputes. And this company had no other way apart, because the email was sent with the information at morning 7, but you updated my price only at 4 o'clock. So as much as this information we get from them directly, and as much as 7 crore INR was the loss per sale.
Wow.
So yes, yes. So in fact, this was one of the use cases which was selected for the excellence award for in automation, and that's when all these details came out. And what we did was, we put enough bots to calculate the whatever information came in was flowing through emails at any point of the day. That's the thing, right? The bot is awake 24/7. As soon as the email
Mm.
came in, it did the calculation, it created an audit trail saying that we got the information at this hour, we have updated it at this point, right? And this reduced the disputes, the stress of handling those cases and paying out those sellers by so much. So this is one of the really hugely successful use cases. A totally different use case. So here we saw something with the revenue, right? It was affecting the revenue. So there are the bots also help reduce the operational issues, right? Think about a finance situation, right? I'm talking about the accounts receivables. And this company, where what we're talking about, is about a 5,000 crore company, and they have about 20,000 transactions in a month, right? So money coming
Mm.
in, money going out. So reconciling that, It's a very tedious manual process. Even for any small company, end of the month we have to do this, right, with your bank statement and whatever is your finance books, right, the bank book and the passbook, right, so those two things have to match. So
Mm,
this matching was causing so much of delay, so much of problems. This is, there is a very particular term called a two-way match and three-way match. This has to be done accurately. So
mm,
they had about seven entities and a team of six people, overworked and unable to manage it. So the
mm,
bot today is doing their this account receivables collection accounting, we call it the reconciliation basically,
mm.
so efficiently, and with just one bot they're able to get the reconciliation for all these entities.
Wow, it's pretty impressive, Jyoti.
Right.
Both the numbers that you talked about, they are enormous, humongous. Okay, wonderful. So, from whatever that you have said, are there certain industries or certain processes which are well suited for RPA?
Um, a very relevant question, I would say. While we do say that RPA is useful everywhere, right? Wherever there's manual work, RPA can be of use. Having said that, so wherever there is lot of repeated work, big bulk of data, and a stable process already set. And so when we say
Mm,
accounts payable, even though your company is doing something slightly different, a small company is doing it differently, an enterprise is doing it differently, a software company is doing it differently, whereas a blue collared company is doing it differently, still accounts payable is accounts payable. So having that is the automation 101 for us. We need a stable process, we need the rules of the processes, we need the exceptions to be able to handle it, and that's when automation becomes a success. So with this in
mm,
mind, the finance and accounting, BFSI, they are the low hanging fruit, and most of the RPA use cases start from there. If a company starts
mm.
with that, and something like an insurance and retail where there's a lot of MIS and data related requirements, these all are very good candidates for RPA implementation.
Okay, so say for example, I have decided to go with RPA. What are the mistakes that I should avoid?
Yeah, I think Arvind will take us through the technical mistakes a little later. So,
Yeah.
right. So,
Yeah, I had just one answer for that, right? When people wants to sort of set off on an automation journey, there's one pitfall that they usually should avoid is picking on a wrong use case for automation.
Mm,
If they pick on one mistake or one wrong use case that they shouldn't be a candidate for automation and they picked on it, they are heading in a wrong direction.
so this is hard
mm,
So
learned lesson for Arvind and team Joseph. So, right, there's a lot of heartburn that has happened for us to learn this lesson, right? Okay, so very clearly, I feel we should know what we can automate and what we should not automate, right?
mhm,
And so I have a whole list of things, right? So every time a project ends, I have a things set of things that what went wrong or what could have been done better or what went right. How is it that we were so successful in this use case, right? So some of the things that I have noted down are there's a lack of commitment, right, from stakeholders. It could either be from the leadership team or from the team below who are actually close to the process. Both of this will not work,
mm,
right? So let's say
mm,
that the IT manager has heard about RPA, right? Those are the ones who
mhm,
really hear about the trends, right? And they're very keen to bring it in. But if they don't
mhm,
have the buy-in of the CFO or the CIO, right, or the higher management, budgets won't be allocated, or the finance team just won't cooperate with them. And somewhere we get caught in between all this, the implement system integrators, where the politics of the company, it doesn't help the project. Or whereas
mhm,
there's a higher management is completely pushing for it, but the process owners themselves either don't have time or don't see the value in it, so they don't cooperate with us to get it implemented. So these are all the
mhm,
practical issues we find, right? So there's also there's no clear RPA strategy in some companies, right? So they want to probably, they have a particular problem, they want to just do that. So when we do that, we probably end up automating that that process, but nothing goes beyond that. So there's so much more
Mm.
that the company could have taken. Just think of the bot itself, right? It is what a human could have done in maybe 4 hours, 5 hours, it can do it in 50, 60 minutes. There is another 23 hours the bot is sitting idle, but nobody is
Mm.
thinking about that. You bought the license for that, but so there needs to be a strategy to, make the best use of the bot, right? And
Mm.
sometimes I feel this over expectation out of the bot, right? We have heard this. So once you automate this, can our complete AP team not work on that? So
Mm.
that doesn't really happen. So right, while there is up to, we have seen even 90%, 95, even in places 100% automation, the idea is to not, expect to eliminate the human workforce here. It's always the
Mm.
person who has done that for the last 10 or 15 years is the most intelligent person to handle that situation, right? The bot is going to take out the grunt work out of it, right?
The
So
mundane work out of it. Okay.
correct.
Yeah, so
Okay.
may I just add, when to introduce RPA is also a very important thing,
Hmm.
because if your process is not matured, right, and if you try to bring in RPA at that point in time, you're wasting a lot of your resources, right? We had this experience with working with a company where they're still in the middle of a lot of transformations within the organization. They're introducing the ERP, right? They're uh, this whole transformation exercise, they're just taking it in one go, right? And right in the middle, they also want to automate few things. But but the thumb rule is, we always automate processes which are more mature, right? Which have sort of
Mm.
matured over the years. There's a set process, right? And all of that, there shouldn't be any uncertainties. And this company sort of, in the middle of this transformation, who are, some team is building an API, somebody is implementing an ERP and all of that, and they also want to introduce RPA, right? We get caught in the middle of all of this, where we spend a lot of time fixing their issues, rather than streamlining an automation process. So this is one of the learnings.
This RPA as such, how is it different from writing a Python script to scrape data from website? How is it different?
Fundamentally, if you speak, there is no difference, right?
Uh-huh.
It's basically, you have sort of programmed your stuff to be done automatically, right? But it depends on what tool you have used. Python
Hmm.
being an open source tool, no, it's very heavy, and it's very programmer centric, right? Somebody has to know how to code the entire thing. um, but that really did not help much, because there are a lot of people in the industry who do not know how to code, right? But they
Mm.
do understand the process and how to automate it, right? They have that business knowledge. For them to sort of get participate in the automation journey, you need to have some tools which sort of make this process of creating an automation workflow much easier. So what
Mm.
happened with the evolution of RPA is, people coming up with clever tools with unpackaged libraries which can simplify all of these tasks, right? What we see as like three industry leading tools, UiPath or Automation Anywhere or Power Platform, what they have done is they have built packages for specific tasks, right? Say for downloading a file, for copying from one place to another, right? Monitoring an email, all of these come pre-packaged now, right? No one has to know how to monitor an email anymore, because if you have to sit
Mm.
down and write a code on this using using Python, people may take several months, right? So it's not just, so things have become a lot more simpler now that the packaged libraries are available to perform these tasks. So it's more about assembling of these tasks and creating a workflow which has become a lot more simpler over the years. So that's why nobody goes back to Python. Python is still useful. Not that it's not useful. It's useful in handling large amounts of data, which these modern day RPA programs still lack somewhere, right? So RPA has gone a step ahead to include, even if you're a programmer, you know both Python and as well as a tool, you can still invoke your Python script using an RPA,
Mm.
right? So that's a change which has happened. So
Okay.
and also not just it's a matter of writing a piece of code and make it run over and over again. You also have to think about security and scalability issues, right? Some of these codes that
Hmm.
you write using Python are they are not very secure in the first place. You need to sort of place it in the right folder, run it from a different machine, give permissions and all of that, right? But with these tools with which we have today, security and scalability are at the heart of these solutions. So that it
Mm.
makes much more easier for enterprises to embrace these technologies.
Okay. Jyoti, you talked about accounts payable, and Arvinda, you talked about file downloads and those kinds of stuff. Now, RPA initiatives, are they one off? I write it, and then for decades I can reap benefits out of it, or is it something that I need to continue to maintain? Example, Arvinda, as we talked about the Python script,
Hmm.
it is not one off. I need to write it, and then probably some structure of the website change, so I need to go and change it. So it's an ongoing process that I need to do. Is that something that RPA handles it? RPA is kind of I can write and forget, or I have to continue to maintain it. How does that work?
Right. So I think this is a question, right? Even some of the companies don't think of when they're doing it, right? So they assume that once we build the bot, it's going to run forever. So, but as you very clearly say that if the process changes, if the underlying applications changes, we also need to tweak the automation solutions themselves, right? So when I
Hmm.
say tweak, it really is that we are not looking at changing the whole thing. So we just probably need to redirect it to the proper UI, the folders, whatever is the process change, handle that. So there definitely is a maintenance, and the best way is to when we automate something, right? Um, and we use that for maybe 6 months or 8 months, and from two people to four people start using it, somebody else from a cross functional team uses it, you realize how the scope of the automation can be expanded. So we are doing from here
Mm.
to here, now we can do this too, we can bring in that. So that is how the automation should mature, not just the maintenance or the bug fixing of these things. It should encompass, it should grow more and more end to end, try to include the more of the exceptions. So this requires maybe a system integrators team to do the big bang implementation once. But the whole idea is to be to build a sustainable team within the company who can take care of this and slowly add in smaller improvements. And after all, you people know the company knows the process the best, right? So that is the way it should go.
Okay. Are RPAs and chatbots same? How are they different? What are the similarities?
Uh, the people often mistake, because there's a word in the there is a bot in the chatbot and there is a bot also when it comes to RPA, right? People sort of often mistake one for another. These are like two different. They're not the same, right? So where chatbot where most people experience is when customer facing opportunities, right? Where it's a bank, an
Mm.
insurance, a call center is basically is replacing their workforce with something like a chatbot which can quickly respond. Um, where there are pre-programmed see chatbots, what do they basically do? They're constantly trying to guess what the user is trying to ask, right? there is an uh, there is an element of trying to guess what is the right intent, right? So what is the intent of a user who is coming onto my chatbot and asking what is the information that he's seeking? So this is mostly sort of powered by something like an NLP, natural language processing,
Yeah.
which is trying to sort of decode the user's intent. And once the intent is sort of guessed correct, uh, what RPA can do, right? How RPA and a chatbot, though they are two different things, can work together is right. The chatbot, which is giving an interface, can figure out what is the user's intent here, and once it detects that the user is sort of interested in, say, the bank balance, what is my approved loan amount, right, pre-approved loan amount that I'm qualified for, right, these things. If the chatbot can pass on that intent to an RPA, no, which is managing the task behind the scenes, right, can pick up, say that this user is actually looking for his balance amount and the qualifying loan amount on his account, right? If these two intents are passed on to somebody who is in the background, the RPA can pick up that information, go to two different systems in the
Mm,
background,
mm,
right? Pick up an account balance from one place and say from a different system where they maintain this loan status, right? It can pick
mm,
up those two and feed it back to the chatbot again. So chatbot is just an interface, but the actual work, uh, so a chatbot is good at figuring out the user's intent, while the RPA has to go and do the task, the actual task.
You'll have to imagine the RPA bot, as having extended hands and legs, right? So it can fetch data from multiple systems. It can be on a desktop, it can be on the web, it can be, inside a database, and it can do all kinds of data massaging, changing it into whatever format you want, go back and update it to multiple other systems much quicker, right? So,
mm,
and to this you now add the cognitive skills, right? Like how Arvinda was saying, we can integrate an NLP where it can understand the intent of a email or a customer's conversation, or you add the skill set of the ML where over the years it learns from what it has been doing, right? Let's say that you've been correcting it, saying that when something like this comes, don't do this, do this. By the second or third time it understands that this is the path I have to take. Or you add an AI where you give the the artificial intelligence of how a human eye deciphers data in an image, right? So that's where the bot starts becoming smart. It was already fast and all those things. Now it starts becoming smart.
mm, Oh, wonderful. You talked about AI, and Arvinda, you also talked about NLP, which is a form of machine learning. Now, what's the play of AI ML in RPA?
Again, no, because there is a robotics in this in this buzzword, right? So people often mistake that if AI, ML, RPA, are they all the same? Are they all related? Again, RPA and AI, they're two different topics, right? If you had to sort of, if you had to give an analogy, right? Uh, Artificial intelligence is, is more about a human judgment or a human thinking, right?
Hmm.
That's AI part of it, and then there is um, a doing part of it. There is a thinking and there is a doing part. Somebody who can sort of move his legs, move his hands and do some activity, that's the RPA part of it. And
Mm.
thinking part of it is the brain part, right? That's the AI part of it, right? So they should not be sort of mistaken one for another,
Wow, wow,
right?
that's a very fine definition that you've given, Arvinda.
Yeah,
But the
Fantastic.
say for
joy of
example,
it,
right?
that's a beautiful example. But the joy of it is we can marry them very happily, right? They work
Mm,
together very well, and we can build a much better solution.
mm,
Say for
wonderful.
example, right? You're driving, right?
Hmm.
And on the road, if you see a lot of traffic, so your brain is processing that information, right? That it's a busy road, it's a busy day, and you need to slow down, right? How do you slow down? You need to apply your brakes, right? So that's the applying, the action of applying brakes is the RPA part, right? The process of sending that information that it's a busy road, it's it's heavy traffic, that information, capturing that information is the job of a brain, right? So this is how they work together, though they are like two separate things. RPA helps in achieving what AI wants to do.
Okay, good.
So let me draw
Uh,
that parallel to the business situation right away, right? So that
mhm,
we have a use case where the information comes out of these scanned images, right? So these are hard copies of invoices, and the companies, scan that, and somebody is manually keying in that information. And sometimes these
yeah.
have like 800 line items. So can you imagine
Hmm.
somebody keying in that many things? So now
Hmm.
let's think of this use case without an AI, right? So just the RPA bot. So even it has an OCR inbuilt, it tries to decipher, and but it's not as intelligent as the human eye to understand and put that information. So there's only so much it can do. Now here bring in the AI backed OCR, right? So it suddenly becomes much more intelligent than just the earlier solution. So if there is a tilt, if the quality is bad, and it understands that two line items are still, two rows are still one line item, this is 800 separate line items. So all this intelligence is coming from the AI backed OCR. It extracts the
Mm.
data from there, from the extraction to then doing the tax calculations and going and updating in the finance books, the RPA does. So that's how we can,
Mm.
enhance the our landscape of automation, or the impact of the solution, by marrying these two.
You talked about that three or four different tools that are available in the market for the RPA, UiPath, automation, anywhere. From a very very broad perspective, what are the differences? When should we go for UiPath? When should we go for automation anywhere? Are there anything like that?
So that would really be a very tricky question. But then, see, we are also the people who have implemented each of these for a different set of customers and seen the good and bad of that, right? So it is very specific to the customer's existing. See, RPA sits on top of a lot of applications, right? So your
Hmm.
enterprise already has a lot of systems. You have your HRMS, your payroll system, and the core business needs so many applications. So we are talking about anywhere from 4 to 5 to 20 to 25 applications which the RPA needs to integrate with and automate. Okay, so
Hmm.
all these play a big role when we have to decide this. So let's assume you have a very typical Microsoft shop. You
Hmm.
have D365 CRM, Microsoft 365 for the rest of the Office 365. You store your data on a SharePoint, right? So it just makes sense with going ahead with the automation solution that Microsoft provides,
Mm.
right? Or there is a very specific uh, what would I say, technically difficult, such kind of you have very specific applications, right? So there we suggest UiPath, which seems to be able to automate a lot of things, right? Or
Okay.
very, when there is this simple Excels and those things, it doesn't matter. It matters on which process and how you automate it.
Where will RPA go from here?
Sure, I think you said it right. I think the we are already seeing the trend happening, but it is going to be more and more pronounced. I think the world is heading towards intelligent automation, right? So far, the automation that we have seen over in the past few years has been mostly task automations, right? Uh, Process automations and all of that. But we are getting into an area where we have to sort of integrate AI and ML into these workflows. That's where intelligent automation is heading, right? You're going to dealing with the more and more of unstructured data, right? The voice data, the messages, the
Mm.
conversations, all of these are still largely unstructured, right? As in when we learn more and more about making a sensible intelligence out of these large unstructured data, that's when we can sort of start applying rules also on top of it. Today, the email conversations, the chats, and all of that, right? It's very difficult to sort of get an intelligent output out of those large amounts of data. I think when
Mm.
we sort of have computer vision, right? Computer vision is getting better and better every day. There is sentiment analysis through text analytics that is getting better. NLP is getting better, right? So all of these will produce a very useful output which RPA can take it and run, right? I
Mm.
think all those tasks which requires human judgment is where we were sort of avoiding to get into the RPA area, right? As and when we sort of learn to use leverage AI, RPA would be a natural follower of those areas. I think that's where we are heading.
Okay.
But if you see from a business landscape per se, Joseph, right, the RPA was a new buzzword at one time, was the luxury of the enterprises at some time, right? It's now becoming a mandate for all businesses, right? Big or
Correct.
small. It is going, the demand, the cost and demand, the way it is going, it is going to get reduced to an utility model as we speak about, right? Be it the licenses, the implementation. because more and more people, companies are going to be implementing that, right? So think of it in things like maybe our digital payments, right? Just a few years ago, it was very few people used to do it. Very few businesses would accept it, right? But today it is the way of things. So similarly, companies are going to be pressurized by their customers, their peers, their competitors, their vendors, and even by now by compliance and government, right? So if you talk about e-invoicing, so government is digitizing a lot of things, and
Mm.
so there will be no other way other than automating your stuff. Maybe in the next few years, nobody is going to be doing manual BRS anymore, right? So and we will be thinking that, oh, were they doing that at some time, right? So that's the way it will go. RPA is going to become something that will be integrated very easily. I like to use that word utility, right? It's going to become just one more thing that happens along with the rest of the applications,
Oh, okay.
right?
So it is going to be an integrated utility in the business way of doing things.
Correct. So we already see the low code platforms and yeah, cognitive skills integrated platforms are, they're becoming very easily accessible to people, not just technology people. It's just accessible for you anywhere. You can buy and experience them, and those things, right? And what they're calling it as a digital worker, right? You can have an HR admin's persona. You
Mm.
can have an accounts payables persona and give it some job to do it. You can do things on a subscription basis, saying that I have 1,000 invoices, please process it, and this is my ERP, and securely update it there, and pay a cost for that, a monthly cost. We are
Mm.
doing that. We are
Mm.
having the managed services. We run the whole thing as a subscription basis. So when things become so easy and cost effective, right, there is no way from not adopting it.
Very true. They are only going to be disadvantageous if they don't automate these things when everybody else is adapting it.
Exactly, right.
Okay.
Right.
Jyoti, how should anybody get in touch with you to get started on the RPA?
Oh, lovely. So, I mean, our website is what we have put together with some of our most interesting use cases. Have a look at our resources. All the information is there. And Arvind and I, we are, even though we have a team, we still, as co-founders, we want to be the first touch point to our new customers. You can reach out to us through our website.
Thank you,
Right.
Jyoti. Thank you, Arvinda, for taking your time to talk to me about RPA. I have learned quite a bit as I have explained to you. The first audience for this podcast is always me, and I have learned quite a bit from both of you. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you,
Thank
Joseph.
you, Joseph.
Thank
We
you.
enjoyed it too.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Please share what you liked in the conversation on social media and tag us. Have a life of wins.